Despite not having finished it yet at the recording of this video, Bleach is one of the most evocative, expressive, and emotionally powerful stories I've ever experienced, and both the strength and range of things that it makes me feel are impactful beyond words. But the curious thing about it is that in spite of the emotions it evokes, I rarely find myself crying or even tearing up while reading it. I get very hyped up and excited when it comes to big moments or theorizing, but in terms of the classically tear-jerky stuff, I don't find myself being moved. On the surface. As an easy comparison, I have totally bawled my eyes out at stretches of the other two members of the big three, but when it comes to Bleach, I've only teared up a couple of times, and that's a bit peculiar considering how much I'm enjoying the story and how strongly it affects me. But the reason for this is far from a lack of quality when it comes to the communication of those emotions, but simply because for me personally, Bleach imparts feelings that are much more subtle and promoting of inward expression rather than outward. I often find myself experiencing a torrent of emotions and reacting, but in terms of my feelings when it comes to sadness, rather than tears, it all becomes a cavalcade of internal, wordless reflections that are difficult to express in traditional ways. Bleach makes me just as emotional as many other of my strong favorites, but it does so in a way that is quiet. A gradual but inevitable melancholy and reflective sadness that fills me with contemplation and angst. And it is incredibly strong. Because as I said, I haven't even finished the story, not even close, as I'm currently just at the end of the Arrancar saga. But I doubt this specific aspect of the narrative will change, and I'm just bursting at the seams with feelings for this series, so as a result, I'm happy to say some things here conclusively despite not being done. Because Bleach is special and unique, and it does so much in such an effective way. One word that consistently feels appropriate throughout the story for me is loneliness. Bleach is lonely. It feels lonely. I often half joke that one of the main themes of Bleach is that these people need therapy, the ability to dissect their feelings, understand themselves, and form and foster connections. And in all honesty, that isn't so far from the truth. While it has justifiably garnered this reputation for being this story that is so obsessed with and celebratory of classic meathead battle shonen, filled to the brim with fights that are often in and of themselves the methodology through which we can understand these characters and see how they come to comprehend themselves and communicate with each other, what I take away from Bleach most is the meaningful quiet within that storm. The moments of solemn contrast that speak just as loudly as the blood and swords and conflict and spectacle. For example, as teasing, psychopathic, and malevolent as Gin seems to be, what I consistently found most thought-provoking and meaningful from him was a single line of stark contrast spoken to his love. "I'm sorry." As much as Kenpachi is this unbelievable personification of the blood and thunder and passion and joy of battle shonen, the moments that speak to me just as loud as the rawness are the contrasting contemplation, where he states with an exhale that he doesn't want to die while fighting Neutra, that he doesn't want this to end, almost seeming to surprise himself. Or when he ponders his quote-unquote defeat to Ichigo with Yachiru, saying that he wants to get stronger by his own hand. Ulquiorra's final fight is unbelievable in thematics and scope and imagery, but the most exceptional thing about it was his quiet realization of his heart at the end. Despite how outwardly silly Orihime can be, her most defining moment involves her silent, unheard words to Ichigo during Goodbye Halcyon days. Neutra is incredibly over-the-top and raucous, but his last moments and reflections speak the loudest to me, as they are the most honest and reflective of the core of who he is. That core being a silent scream of emptiness. And then there's Aizen, who loudly gesticulates at any given opportunity, but for whom, for me, some of the most important things are left unsaid. How he taunts others for being too far or too close to understand him, but never stops to contemplate that he has made it so no optimal distance could ever allow others to understand him, and that he doesn't seem to understand himself. Kubo just has this uncanny ability to transmit the souls and emotional wanderlust of these characters with such poignancy through the little details. And all of these moments for all of these characters indicate a hollowness within them, a strange attachment to this world despite the tumultuous nature of it, a curious fear, a bottomless hunger that will never be satiated no matter what they desire and consume. It's all indicative of a very human desolation, and it all equates to that feeling of melancholy and loneliness to me. And the aesthetics directly feed into this as well. More than almost any other story I've seen, the visuals in Bleach are their own language running in parallel to the text that have as much meaning as it, and divulge some things exclusively before the story does. But even aside from that, there is that somber sadness and reflection in the fleeting panels I think of as I reflect on my journey so far. Masaki protecting Ichigo in the rain, Kisuke putting out an umbrella for him, Old Man Zangetsu looking up at the sky lamenting the sacred pain it represents, the sad look from Ichigo to Orihime upon realizing the monster he seems to be. Just as much as being moments of immense narrative substance, these visuals evoke feelings of sorrow, longing, creeping fear, of an undefinable search for something abstract. Bleach has characters that long to self-actualize but stumble and struggle on the way to doing so, leading to immense anguish and feelings of regret, self-punishment, and grief. It has characters struggling to see value in themselves, surrounded by others who very much see that value but for one reason or another cannot communicate it. There are characters tormented by a bottomless, aspirational hunger for so much, yet who cannot be fulfilled no matter what. Those who yearn to be human and who do seem to achieve it, but who then disappear, leaving us with a sense of what could have been. God complexes to fill that hole, an inability to connect with others and oneself, not letting others get too close, misguided motivations with good intent. It's a story full of lost souls clutching for straws who yearn for the seemingly impossible to feel complete, and that is deeply sad to me and hits just as hard as traditional orthodox tragedy. In this sense, the biggest comparison I can make to another story here with regards to this tone is The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess, another highly subtextual work. Similar to Bleach, the emotions there don't tend to hit me like a truck, but instead turn me inward and fill every part of me with pure melancholy and a ponderous loneliness that is difficult to comprehend and define. It's a style that isn't for everyone, but when done well, it is absolutely for me, and the power is unmistakable. Zanpakuto being reflective of characters' innermost feelings, Bankai going a step further and showing us the deepest, most honest essence of their soul. Through the very nature of its fighting system and design, Bleach is the most intimate character study possible. We know these characters in ways that almost feel violating. We see what they hide from themselves and must battle internally, and we speculate on what they must do to progress towards that seemingly unreachable happiness. And that is the crux. I want to see these characters happy. I want them to be fulfilled, or at the very least, in the cases where that fulfillment would be unsavory, I want them to come to terms with their mistakes and who they are, because I think the story is such an advocate of knowing yourself, and I think so much of that characteristic unplaceable sadness stems from these characters being lost within themselves, or confused. But that's why the frequent epiphanies are so gratifying. Even in the moments of tragedy and death, these characters learn something about themselves and are fulfilled in one way or another. Grimmjow, Neutra, Gin, Tosen, Ulquiorra. But most of all, the character I want that for most is of course Ichigo. I want him to understand himself wholly and properly come to terms with who he is to mature. This story is a reflection of Ichigo and his struggle with his purpose and identity, and what keeps me coming back the most is wanting the best for him and hoping beyond hope that he finds the peace and truth that he deserves. For him to prevail and cut his blade through this monotonous sadness with a silent conviction. Again, I don't know that this will happen for sure, but it all seems geared up for it, and to me would be poetic contrast in the opposite direction that would feel really fitting. But having said that, even if that does happen, it would do nothing to change my feelings on the tone and stylistics of this story. Bleach fills me with this hollow sadness that I cannot shake, and I wouldn't change that for the world. Many thanks for watching.